Today is a sad day. Those were the words that stopped everything. No engines running, no sparks flying, just silence. For a man known for noise, chaos, and metal bending under pressure, silence was never part of the plan. Something had shifted behind the scenes, something heavy enough to slow a life that never knew how to stop. At 52, Bad Chad didn't disappear overnight. There was no single explosion, no headline scandal, no dramatic goodbye. Instead, cracks started forming where fans weren't looking. Familiar faces faded from the shop. Uploads slowed down. Questions grew louder. And the man who once turned scrap into magic began carrying a weight no camera could fully capture. Success was supposed to make life easier. Television fame was meant to open doors. But what happens when the thing that lifts you also starts pulling you apart? When pressure doesn't come from failure, but from staying on top? And when personal loss collides with public expectation, leaving no place to hide? This isn't the story most people think they know. It's not about quitting. It's not about giving up. It's about what really happens when the grind never stops and life quietly changes direction. So stay with us. By the end of this video, the truth behind Bad Chad's dark turn may change how you see his journey forever. A builder before the spotlight. Long before television crews ever found their way to his shop, Chad Hiltz was already fully absorbed in his work. His life revolved around a small, rough garage in Nova Scotia, where space was tight and conditions were far from comfortable. There were no polished floors or expensive machines, just old metal, worn tools, and piles of scrap parts that most people would ignore or throw away. For Chad, that scrap wasn't junk. It was a possibility. It was enough to keep him going day after day. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. Fame was never the goal. Trophies and praise didn't matter much to him. What mattered was the work itself. Cutting steel, welding pieces together, shaping broken parts into something that could move again. Every build came with risk. Mistakes were common, and fixing them was part of the process. Chad didn't follow the rule books or industry standards written by others. He learned by getting his hands dirty, by failing, adjusting, and trying again until something finally worked. Money was always a challenge. Custom building rarely brings easy profit. Each project depended on limited time, hard-to-find materials, and trust from people willing to take a chance on his vision. One wrong move could wipe out weeks of effort and income. Still, Chad pushed forward. Slowly, word spread. People noticed his style. It wasn't smooth or perfect, but it felt real. Then television arrived. Opportunity came fast and loud. Suddenly, that small shop carried deadlines, contracts, and expectations that grew quicker than the foundation beneath it. When success brings pressure, not peace, television changed everything, but not always in the way people expect. Viewers saw finished builds and dramatic reveals. What they didn't see was the pressure behind each episode. Every build now had a clock. Miss a deadline, and costs went up. Materials had to be sourced fast. Labor hours stretched longer. Mistakes became public. Stress followed every step. Chad wasn't just building cars anymore. He was performing. The cameras needed tension. The schedule demanded speed. Creativity had to fit into a format. That balance is harder than it looks. The shop also became a business machine. Bills didn't stop because filming was stressful. Payroll still mattered. The tools broke. Parts arrived late. One delay created another. Success brought attention, but it also removed privacy. Every decision was judged. Every flaw was replayed online. What once felt like freedom slowly became pressure that never turned off. The name that became a problem. Before the world knew Bad Chad, there was another identity tied closely to his work, a name that fans loved, a brand that carried meaning. It represented years of effort, long nights, and creative pride. Then reality stepped in. Legal issues surfaced around branding. Paperwork followed. Warnings arrived. Suddenly, something built with passion became a risk. Keeping that name could threaten the entire business. Changing it wasn't simple. Signs had to come down. Merchandise had to be replaced. Online presence had to shift. That costs money, time, energy, all while still trying to meet deadlines and stay afloat. For a small shop, this wasn't a minor setback. It was a financial hit during an already demanding phase. Every dollar spent fixing branding was a dollar not spent on tools or materials. The work continued, but the weight grew heavier. When the world slowed everything down, just as things felt stretched to their limit, the world changed. The pandemic didn't just pause daily life. It broke systems. Parts became hard to find. Shipping delays turned weeks into months. Filming rules tightened. Crews became smaller. Costs increased. Custom builds rely on flow. When that flow breaks, everything slows. Projects stalled. Schedules collapsed. Expenses didn't stop, even when income did. Television networks shifted priorities. Bigger shows felt safer. Smaller productions became harder to justify. Without warning, momentum faded. When the show ended, there was no clear goodbye. Episodes stopped airing. Fans were left confused. For Chad, it meant facing life without the platform that once drove traffic and income. The spotlight turned off, but the bills stayed. Online judgment and quiet damage fame doesn't simply vanish when the cameras stop rolling. It changes form, shifting into something quieter but no less powerful. For Chad, the spotlight was replaced by constant online scrutiny. Social media, forums, and comment sections became arenas where every decision, every weld, and every choice was analyzed and debated. Builders questioned his methods. Viewers doubted the authenticity of his work, and casual observers assumed they understood the full story. Every post, every opinion felt amplified, turning private challenges into public commentary. At first, Chad ignored it. He had faced skepticism before, built his reputation by proving critics wrong, and trusted his own judgment. But constant noise has a way of wearing anyone down. Slowly, criticism moved from the work itself to Chad's character. Questions about his leadership, management style, and the choices he made for his crew. Running a custom shop is not simple. Decisions are made under extreme pressure, balancing creativity, finances, deadlines, and safety. Context is everything, but online judgment rarely provides it. Eventually, Chad chose to respond. He didn't offer fake apologies or try to satisfy every opinion. Instead, he explained the reality. Show up, work hard, respect the process. Some understood, others refused to listen. But the impact had already taken root. Stress piled upon stress, and the weight of public pressure mixed with private responsibility, creating a strain that few outside the shop could ever fully grasp. The quiet damage of judgment was invisible, but undeniably real. Loss that changed the rhythm. Then came a moment that no one can ever prepare for. A personal loss struck deeply, shaking both the heart and the very structure of Chad's world. It wasn't just sadness, it affected the rhythm of the business itself. The person who had kept the shop organized, managing schedules, tracking costs, and holding the team together, was suddenly facing grief of their own. Without that steady presence, the shop's usual flow became unpredictable, and small challenges suddenly felt much heavier. Business doesn't stop for pain, but people do. Chad and his team had no choice but to slow down. the usual buzz of activity in the garage quieted. YouTube uploads became sparse, leaving fans waiting longer than usual. Public appearances and community events were put on hold. Silence replaced routine. The world outside saw only the gaps, the absence of content, and they filled it with their own assumptions. Rumors spread online about financial trouble, relationship problems, or even the end of the business. Theories grew faster than facts could ever clarify. What few realized was simple yet profound. Grief changes priorities. It forces reflection, reshapes focus, and demands time for healing. Slowing down wasn't quitting, and stepping back wasn't failure. It was survival. It was about preserving the people and the vision that mattered most, even when the world demanded speed. In those quiet moments, Chad was learning that life's darkest turns often teach the most about resilience, patience, and what truly deserves attention. Reinvention without cameras. When life slowly returned to its rhythm, it didn't resemble the fast-paced chaos that television had once demanded. There were no long statements, no public explanations, and certainly no dramatic announcements to capture attention. Instead, the shop simply began working again. The noise of tools, the sparks from welding, and the smell of metal in the air marked the return of what mattered most: the work itself. Chad didn't need an audience to validate his effort. He needed purpose, focus, and control over his own schedule. YouTube became the new window into his world. Without network executives dictating what was entertaining or producing drama for ratings, Chad regained freedom. Every video, every build, and every repair reflected the shop's authentic rhythm. There were no scripts, no forced conflicts, and no deadlines designed to pressure someone into a spectacle. Just Chad, his son, and the steady, patient process of creation. Merchandise became a small but vital support system for the shop. T-shirts, hats, and custom items allowed loyal followers to connect with the work, while fans who had once watched on television now became part of a supportive community that filled gaps left by the spotlight. Slowly, stability returned, not flashy or immediate, but real and lasting. Working alongside his son brought a deeper sense of purpose. It wasn't just about finishing a project. It was about teaching skills, passing knowledge, and instilling a mindset that would outlast any single build. Chad was building more than cars. He was building legacy, confidence, and independence. The income wasn't dramatic, but it was steady. Success looked different now. Smaller, quieter, more personal. The dark turn wasn't a catastrophic end, it was a transformation. It reshaped priorities, clarified purpose, and proved that real fulfillment isn't measured in fame or applause, but in control, creativity, and the ability to build a life on one's own terms. The physical cost at 52, decades of intense work, leave marks that go far beyond what anyone sees on television. At 52, Chad Hiltz carries the weight of years spent hunched over engine bays, bending steel and lifting heavy parts. Backs ache in ways that sleep cannot fix, and joints stiffen with every cold Nova Scotia winter. Muscles recover more slowly, and the minor injuries that once healed in days now linger for weeks. These are the invisible costs of a life spent creating with your hands. Every day brings reminders of the physical toll. Welding burns leave scars, sometimes small, sometimes deep. Cuts and scrapes are routine, each one a reminder that even experience cannot prevent accidents entirely. Long hours in unheated shops intensify the strain. Vibrations from grinders rattle bones. Cold air stiffens shoulders and fingers. The body is constantly tested, and yet it continues to respond because the work is not optional. It is central to who he is. These challenges rarely make it onto the screen. Viewers see finished builds, dramatic reveals, and sparks flying from welding torches. What they do not see is Chad limping into the shop the next morning, icing a swollen joint, or taking a moment to steady himself before lifting another heavy frame. They don't see the repeated strain that accumulates day after day, year after year. Still, Chad shows up. Not for fame, not for accolades, not to impress an audience. The motivation is deeper. Building gives structure, purpose, and meaning. It is the rhythm that orders life when other pressures feel chaotic. The pain is real, but so is the drive to create. At 52, every movement is harder than before, yet each project reminds him why it is worth continuing. Life is measured not by comfort, but by what you shape, leave behind, and teach along the way. The business reality few see running a custom shop is far more than just building impressive cars. It is a constant juggling act between creativity and survival. Every day brings new challenges, many of which remain invisible to fans and viewers. Material costs are never stable. Steel, engines, and specialty parts fluctuate in price, often unexpectedly. A sudden price spike can turn a carefully planned project into a financial gamble. Clients, too, add complexity. Payments are sometimes delayed, or orders change mid-build, forcing Chad and his team to adapt quickly while keeping the shop running. A single mistake in planning or fabrication doesn't just affect the schedule, it can eat directly into profits, leaving weeks of work financially vulnerable. Online attention does not always mean financial stability. While YouTube views and social media engagement can boost visibility, they don't always translate into steady income. Merchandise sales provide some support, allowing fans to feel connected while giving the shop a modest revenue stream. Still, margins remain thin, and the effort behind managing orders, shipping, and production often outweighs the income. Every day requires careful attention to cash flow and resource allocation. Even reported net worth figures can be misleading. Estimates of Chad's earnings might seem impressive, but most of the value is tied up in tools, workshop property, and inventory. These are not liquid assets. They cannot be spent freely, and they require maintenance, upgrades, and constant oversight to remain operational. The reality is that running a shop is about surviving small challenges every day rather than chasing a single dramatic win. One major misstep, an unpaid invoice, a botched project, or an accident could undo months of effort. Success isn't flashy or headline-making. It's measured quietly in the ability to keep the shop open, the buildings progressing, and the team employed. Every decision is a delicate balance, and for Chad, this is the reality few ever see behind the spark, polish, and cameras. What the dark turn really meant. Chad Hiltz's life didn't crumble in a single dramatic event. No scandal shocked the world. No explosive moment that ended everything. The so-called dark turn didn't strike like lightning. Instead, it arrived slowly, through a combination of pressure, personal loss, and the weight of responsibility that comes with decades of work. Every day brought its own challenges: tight deadlines, financial worries, a grieving family, and the constant scrutiny of others. But none of these moments alone defined the change. It was the accumulation, the relentless pace of life, that forced Chad to reconsider what mattered most. Through all of it, Chad didn't abandon his path. He didn't give up on his passion or stop building. Instead, he adapted. He found ways to work within new limits, to balance creativity with practical concerns, and to focus on what he could control rather than what he couldn't. The public may have seen a quieter Chad, a shop less filled with cameras and drama, but behind the scenes, the work continued with focus and intention. Every weld, every cut, every project became a way to reclaim agency over his life. At 52, success no longer means fame or applause. It isn't about television contracts or the number of eyes watching. Success now is quieter but deeper, waking up with control over his schedule, building at a pace that respects both his body and his mind, and working alongside the people who truly matter to him: family, close friends, and trusted collaborators. The dark turn wasn't a sign of failure or destruction. It was a transformation. It reshaped priorities, clarified what matters, and allowed Chad to focus on meaningful work. In the end, the shift wasn't about what he lost. It was about what he gained: freedom, purpose, and the ability to define success on his own terms, without the noise of the outside world dictating his path. At 52, Bad Chad's story isn't about fading away. It's about choosing what matters when the noise dies down. The cameras leaving didn't end his work. They gave it back to him. Life took a dark turn, not because everything failed, but because everything became real, exposing limits. Loss reshaped priorities, and success stopped being about attention and started being about purpose. Not every journey ends with applause. Some end with clarity. If this story gave you a new view of what success really costs, let us know in the comments. Your thoughts matter more than rumors ever could. If you found value in this deeper look, make sure to like the video. It helps stories like this reach people who need them. Thanks for staying with us. Sometimes the truth isn't loud, but it's always worth hearing.